Picture this. A young woman records her first podcast episode in a tiny bedroom in Harare. No fancy mic, just a phone and a blanket over her head to block the echo. She uploads the episode and 9 people listen. 5 are family, 1 is a friend from church. She looks at the stats and thinks, what's the point of this? She almost quits. However, fast forward 2 years, that same podcast now has 120 episodes, has been played in 27 countries, and has opened doors for speaking engagements she never imagined. Right. Here's the twist. The breakthrough didn't come at episode 100. It began at episode 1, that embarrassingly small one she almost deleted. It began in the day of humble episodes. Welcome to Dominate Your Potential, the podcast where we equip you to build legacy, lead with faith, and take bold practical steps toward your God-given assignment. Today's episode is titled, Do Not Despise the Day of Humble Beginnings. Do not despise the day of humble episodes, as it were. If you've ever looked at your download numbers, if you're a podcaster, your follower count, your bank balance, or the size of your audience and thought, this is too small to matter, this conversation is for you. See, by the end of this episode, you will see the small beginnings the way God sees them. You will learn why science says tiny, consistent actions are far more powerful than dramatic, occasional efforts. Hear real stories of people who stayed faithful past the humble episode stage and saw exponential results. Welcome to Dominate Your Potential. I am your host, Milton Sithole. I'm an author, speaker, and the founder of Millions Impact Training. I'm the author of the book, Dominate Your Potential, Break Free from Self-Defeating Thinking, and you can find the book link on the show description. The book is live on Amazon. Just get yourself a copy and learn more. So, let's start at the source of today's phrase. Do not despise the day of humble beginnings. It's a biblical phrase from Zechariah chapter 4 verse 10. Prophet Zechariah, he wrote, do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. That's powerful. Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see things begin to work. So the context is the rebuilding of the temple. To some people, what they were building looked unimpressive. The new foundation seemed tiny compared to Solomon's temple, right? Yet God's perspective was different. God rejoiced not at the finished building, but at the beginning of the work. So what does this mean for you and me? What does this mean? It means God does not measure our obedience by how big it looks to people, but by our willingness to start and stay faithful. You see, the plumb line in Zerubbabel's hands was a simple construction tool, but God delighted in that small practical step. You see, applying this to podcasting content or to leadership, because remember, I am a family-centric coach. I am all about empowering family-centric leaders. And today, your plump line might be, it's a first podcast episode, say with 7 listeners or with 0 listeners or with 1 listener, a small Zoom Bible study with 3 people, a short form video that gets 42 views. Doesn't matter, whatever it is. The world may scroll past it. But according to scripture, God rejoices when you begin. So, when you publish that humble episode, you are aligning with the divine pattern, small beginnings, supernatural outcomes. Just a moment of reflection. See, when you look at your life, where in your life have you quietly despised your own small step, your own small temple? Like, where have you called something insignificant, whereas God is actually celebrating? You see, there is a science of small beginnings. And let's just move from theology to psychology. Yes, scripture says don't despise small beginnings. And science explains why small beginnings work so powerfully. You see, small actions become habits more quickly than complex ones. And there's a review on habit formation in health behavior they found that small, simple actions are more likely to become automatic and sustainable. In fact, forming one small healthy habit can increase your confidence to go after other bigger changes. So the more you do, it's all about compounding, consistency, right? Tiny consistent habits reduce stress and improve follow through. There is a report at the University of Melbourne that showed that adults who established pre-commitment habits like prepping in advance experienced about 40% lower stress levels and made healthier, more consistent choices. And there's a level of motivation that comes as well with you just getting started, just making that decision. And decision is from the Latin word, it literally means to be cut off. So when you start, you are literally cutting yourself apart from the pack. And motivation plus habit techniques create measurable change. You see, a large-scale habit study found that using structured habit techniques modestly increased how often people performed their new habits. And those who were motivated practiced their habit more frequently each week. In simple terms, small structured steps plus motivation equals real movement. Now, for me, I started this podcast, not much of equipment. I've got this small microphone that I think it was from, is it Temu? It's not even expensive mic. It's just a small microphone. I don't have a filter for my voice, for the echo. I don't have a booth as you do. But what's important for me was to get started. So what does this mean for your humble episodes? For me, I just had to start and say a weekly 15 to 20 minute episode that you can realistically produce is more powerful than an ambitious 90-minute show that burns you out by episode 3. The bottom line is you just have to get started. You have got something to say, you've got a dream, you've got ambition, just get it started. It doesn't matter. You don't have like a big budget. You don't need a budget. You just need to make a decision to get started, no matter how small it is. So small repeatable systems like scripting, the same intro, just recording at the same time each week. Those outlines, like actually you conserve your mental energy so you can keep going. The bottom line is you have to keep going. Every small episode you become a vote for the identity you are building. Remember, we say that you are working on being, not on becoming. The process is who you are becoming on the process. That is what's important. Like, I am a consistent creator, a faithful steward of my message. Remember, you have a message that needs to be heard. It was Miles Monroe who said that you have a message. You were born for a purpose. You were born for a reason, and there is some knowledge that you have. There's some experience that you have. There are some lessons that you can share with this generation. And if you Peradventure, God forbid that something happens to you and you do not share that knowledge, you become what is called a generational thief. So I beg, for whatever reason, whatever you want to do, get it started. It doesn't matter if it looks small. Remember, God rejoices when you begin. Do not despise the day of humble beginnings. Just think about this for a moment. Just think of a young professional in London who decided to record 1 10-minute reflection every week on her lunch break. At first, only a handful of colleagues listen here, but because the habit is small and sustainable, she keeps going week after week. Over time, her voice becomes clearer, her delivery sharper, and her courage stronger. That transformation doesn't come from one big viral moment. It comes from tiny episodes stacked on top of each other. That's right. That's the reality of podcast growth. You see, we are talking about numbers, for example, if you are to talk about numbers, because sometimes what discourages creators most of the time is not theology or psychology, is analytics. Like you look at your stats and you are not happy. It doesn't look like you have listeners, you don't have a lot of following per se. It doesn't matter. Like recent podcast data show that over 70% of listeners complete most of all of a podcast episode, which is much higher than completion rates on many video platforms. Other analyses put average podcast show completion around 80%, with 90% considered excellent. That means if someone presses play on your small episode, they are likely to stay with you. That's right. You see, consistency is more powerful versus quitting. You don't have to quit. If you quit, you are a failure. In 2025, a 2025 industry report focusing on independent podcasters found that on average, it takes about 2 years and 100 episodes before most podcasters start seeing meaningful results. Yet over 94% quit before reaching that point. Why is that? It's called quitting. Another data set noted that nearly 44% of podcasts end after episode 3. I think I mentioned this on my previous episodes. The celebratory episode 10, we are saying that we have now 10 episodes. Like most podcasts, they don't even reach up to episode 3. And today, this is episode 13. We are continuing small steps, humble beginnings. You see, now for creators who remain consistent, pod-fed creators, it creates an opportunity to stand out simply by staying the course. It's about the compound effect. What happens over time? Remember my previous episode, I said, do not overestimate what you could do in 1 year, and do not underestimate what you can do in 5 years. So your discouragement might come from comparing your episode 7 to someone else's episode 207. But realistically and statistically, being among the few who simply do not quit already puts you in a rare company. Right? That's right. So imagine two friends, Tariro and James. They both start their podcasts like in January. We are in January right now, right? And Tariro commits to one short, high-value episode every week for 2 years. James launches with a big splash. Long episodes, heavy editing, daily uploads, and stops at episode 6 because he's exhausted. Fast forward, Tariro has 104 episodes, a clearer niche, deeper trust with a modest but loyal audience, and new coaching clients who feel like they know her from the podcast. James has 6 beautifully produced episodes and no momentum. The difference isn't talent, it's endurance through the humble episode stage, which the data says most people never cross. So, you see, for you, my friend, This is where it becomes practical for you and I. And there are 3 archetype stories that I want to share with you. Now, this is where it gets practical. And here are 3 archetype stories. As you listen, identify which version is closest to your current season. Like there is the 12th download episode. Here is Tabo, who starts a podcast about faith and entrepreneurship in Zimbabwe. And episode 1, he gets 12 downloads. He feels embarrassed and almost doesn't share the link. But instead of quitting, he commits to releasing 1 episode every Friday for a year. He uses a simple structure: 5 minutes scripture, 10 minutes story, 5 minutes application. Treats each listener as a person, not a number. By episode 10, his average is 30 downloads. By episode 30, it's 120. By episode 52, he's at 400 to 500 downloads per episode. With messages from listeners in the United Kingdom, South Africa, who say, "Your voice helped me keep my business going." The growth was not explosive. It was compounded faithfulness. Now, tie back to this. Tabo did not despise his day of 12 download episodes. He put his plumb line in the ground and built. And another story is the small group leader. That's story number 2. It's about Ruth, who runs a weekly online Bible study with 4 women. She records simple audio reflections after each session and uploads them to a private podcast feed. At first, only the 4 women listen. Over time, they start sharing links with friends who are too shy to attend live but are willing to listen in the background while cooking or commuting. After several months, that quiet, humble podcast becomes a resource for women in 3 different countries, some of whom are new believers. Ruth never did a grand public launch. What she did was simple: steward her tiny audience with excellence. The impact looks small on a chart, but huge in eternity. And story number 3 is the young professional and tiny habits. This one is about David, a young professional in London. He wants to develop as a communicator but feels intimidated by long-form content. What does he do? He creates a micro podcast, 5-minute daily reflections on leadership and legacy. Powerful stuff. Because these episodes are short, they are easy to record and publish. You see, you don't need to do a huge, big splash. David just did 5 minutes daily. He didn't go overboard, just 5 minutes daily. And his episodes, they were short. They are easy to record and publish. They become a habit like brushing his teeth, right? Now, psychology tells us that simple actions become habitual more quickly and can boost confidence to take on other challenges. Over time, David notices he's more articulate in meetings. People quote his episodes, and when he eventually launches a longer form show, he already has 200 micro episodes of practice and a core audience that trusts him. His humble episodes function like daily reps in the gym, invisible at first, but transformative in the long run. Yeah. So these are practical steps that we can take, that you can take. And let's learn this with some of these steps like you can take this week, moving forward, just to redefine your success of your next episode, of your next project, of your next thing that you want to do. Instead of asking, how many downloads did I get. Rather ask, did I show up with faithfulness? Did I serve the person on the other side of the headphones if you're a podcaster? Did I improve by 1% in clarity and courage or structure? When your metric is faithfulness and growth, humble episodes become wins, 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 and not failures. So you have to design a tiny, sustainable rhythm. Choose a rhythm that fits your current life season. Be it weekly, it can be 15 to 20 minutes, twice a month with slightly longer episodes, or a 5-minute micro episode every weekday like David. So you have to make it simple enough that you can keep it up for a year. And let's give yourself a year. Remember, do not overestimate what you can do in 1 year and underestimate what you could do in 5. So just give yourself a year. Give it up for a year. Keep it up for a year. Structure it enough that it becomes a habit. Some recording day, some basic outline. Yes, just keep up the momentum, having the same recording day, the same basic outline. Be a good steward your small audience like a mega church. For the next month, pray for your listeners by name. When you know them, invite them to reply, send questions, share testimonies, celebrate every message, every email, every DM as evidence that your voice is reaching real souls. And remember, Jesus often invested deeply in 12 before speaking to thousands and a multitude. Now, research on independent podcasters suggests that impact usually shows up around the 100th episode mark. And that's over 94% quit before they get there. Now, use this as fuel, not fear. Like that is the target right there, 100 episode. At least keep it up until you're at 100. And then you take it up a notch at 100. So just say it out to yourself. Like for myself, I'm saying I commit, I commit to 100 episodes before I judge the outcome. I am committing to 100 episodes before I judge the outcome. So you just have to commit. Commit. That is healthy pressure and accountability. Let's take it back to the Bible. Let's bring it back to scripture and encouragement. When Zechariah wrote, "Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin." Heaven is not embarrassed by your humble episodes. Actually, heaven celebrates them. You understand? God celebrates. Your tiny mic is in a quiet room. It's all right. Your first 10 listeners, powerful. You are doing something. Your awkward early attempts at storytelling, these are not signs that you have failed. They are actually signs that you have begun. You have begun. You have started. You are better off than someone who has not done anything. So the challenge today is simple. Record the next humble episode, publish it, and refuse to despise it. Because one day you will look back from episode 100 or from that stage or from the open door, and you will realize the miracle started when you chose to value the day of humble episodes. Now, this has been a powerful episode even for me, as I have committed to at least 100 episodes. And thank you for tuning in to Dominate Your Potential. And if this episode encouraged you, right, just go to Amazon, get the book Dominate Your Potential, break free from self-defeating thinking, and share it with one person who is about to quit too soon. And remember, you are not behind. You are building episode by episode, day by day, day by humble day. Until next time, keep dominating your potential. And remember, there is no law against dreaming big. So go ahead, dream big and do big things. See you on the next episode. Cheers and God bless.